Rebuild yourself. Let your focus be on you every day. There comes a season in every life when the mirrors break, when the applause fades, when the familiar no longer feels like home. You wake up and realize that somewhere along the path, you lost yourself, not in one moment, but in 1,000 quiet ways. You became what they needed. You performed what they praised. You gave and gave until there was nothing left to give but a smile that no longer reached your soul. And still, you kept moving. Because stopping meant facing the ache you had buried under business. It meant facing yourself. I know this because I have lived it. I have walked through years of becoming what others expected, achieving what looked right, saying yes when my spirit whispered no. I have chased validation like oxygen, only to find that the more I was seen by the world, the less I could see myself. There were days I stood in rooms full of people and felt utterly invisible. There were mornings I stared at my reflection, not with pride, but with a quiet grief, the grief of watching a stranger wear your name. But one day, something shifted. Not with a shout, but a whisper. A gentle voice inside me asked, what would happen if you chose you? Not in selfishness, but in sincerity. What if you stopped waiting to be saved and started becoming? What if you made your own healing the priority, your own peace the project, your own joy the mission? That question unraveled everything. Because I realized that I had spent my life building for others what I never built for myself. I had mastered the art of being everything except whole. This book is not a guide to fixing your life. It is an invitation to rebuild yourself. Brick by brick. Belief by belief. Breath by breath. Not from shame, but from love. Not from panic, but from power. You are not broken, you are buried. Beneath the noise, the roles, the obligations, there is still a self that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. That self is not lost. It is just waiting. For you. And that is the foundation of everything you are about to read, the radical belief that your healing is your responsibility. Your focus is not a luxury, it is your lifeline. You are not here to revolve around others while you decay inside. You are not here to decorate a life that secretly drains you. You are here to rebuild. Not what they want, but who you are. Because the truth is, you cannot be whole for others until you are whole with yourself. We live in a world that glamorizes self-sacrifice, applauds exhaustion, and romanticizes burnout. But the people who suffer most are often the ones who give most. They are praised for being strong when in reality, they are just used to carrying weight that was never meant to be theirs. But strength is not staying silent. Strength is choosing to return to yourself, even when the world calls you selfish for doing so. Focusing on yourself is not abandonment. It is alignment. It is not disconnection. It is devotion to the one person you must live with for the rest of your life. When you rebuild yourself, you do not become less loving. You become more grounded, more clear, more present. You stop loving people from a place of need and start loving from a place of wholeness. And that love, the one that flows from fullness, changes everything. So if you are tired, if you are lost, if you are done living for everyone but yourself, you are in the right place. This is not a story about blame. It is a story about becoming. It is not about revenge. It is about returning to the version of you that is honest, clear, unapologetically focused. Because when you focus on yourself, not out of arrogance, but alignment, the world around you begins to shift. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. The journey will not be easy. Rebuilding rarely is. There will be days when you want to crawl back into your old patterns. Days when you miss the comfort of being needed more than you were seen. Days when you wonder if all this focus is even worth it. And on those days, I want you to remember anything that costs you yourself is too expensive. And nothing, no title, no relationship, no reputation is worth more than your peace. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not too much, too tired, too broken. You are simply overdue. Overdue for the moment you finally look in the mirror and say, it is time to come home. Home to the truth. Home to the healing. Home to the focus you have so freely given to others, now turned inward like a beam of light that says, I matter too. This is your time. Not to fix. Not to perform. But to rebuild. To lay new foundations of truth, boundaries, and love, the kind that begins with you and spills into everything you touch. Your life does not begin when someone else chooses you. It begins when you choose yourself fully, daily, unapologetically. Chapter 1. When you finally choose you. It is strange how long a person can live without truly living. You get good at the routine. You learn how to smile when you are tired. You master the art of being okay enough to avoid concern. You tell yourself this is what adulthood looks like, to provide, to perform, to keep things moving. And you do. You move. You push. You carry. Until one day something inside you stops. Not your body. Your soul. And it asks the question that haunts in silence, when was the last time I did something just for me? The answer is hard to face. Because the truth is, you have been living on autopilot for years. Saying yes because it is easier than explaining no. Showing up because people expect you to. Keeping the peace by keeping yourself quiet. It works for a while. You are praised for being dependable. Appreciated for being strong. But no one notices the slow erosion of your joy. No one sees the dreams you put on pause to meet their needs. No one sees the resentment blooming beneath your politeness. Until one day you feel it. In your body. In your breath. In the way your eyes glaze over when you talk about your life. You feel the heaviness of not choosing yourself. The ache of always putting yourself last. And something in you, something ancient and sacred, finally says enough. That is when the rebuild begins. Not with a plan. With a pause. With the realization that continuing this way is no longer an option. That the real risk is not choosing yourself. That the danger is not in failing, but in fading. The moment you choose you, everything starts to shift. You start to notice what you were willing to tolerate in exchange for approval. You start to see how often you have confused being liked with being respected. You start to recognize how much of your time is spent performing instead of living. And it hurts. It hurts to realize how long you have lived outside of yourself. But it is also freeing. Because now you know. You cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to pretending that peace is found in pleasing. People will notice the change. They will say you are distant. Cold. Different. And they are right, you are. You are distant from your old patterns. Cold to manipulation. Different in the best possible way. Because you are no longer running on empty. You are no longer saying yes out of guilt. You are no longer proving your worth by how much of yourself you can sacrifice. You are building something real now. And real things require space, boundaries, and truth. Choosing yourself is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of remembrance. You are remembering who you were before you were told who to be. You are remembering the voice you silenced to keep the peace. You are remembering the body you ignored until it screamed. You are remembering the dreams you buried under the title of too much. And with every step back to yourself, you are reclaiming a life that was always meant to be yours. But do not expect the world to celebrate your choice. Some people benefited from your self-minus neglect. Some people relied on your silence to stay comfortable. Your growth will make others uncomfortable. Your focus will feel like rejection to those who only knew how to love you when you were available for their needs. But you cannot shrink to make them feel safe. You cannot delay your healing to protect their comfort. This is your life. And if they love you, the real you, they will adjust. If not, they were never meant to stay. You may feel lonely in the beginning, because the rebuild is quiet. It is personal. It is sacred. You will have to sit with yourself. Face the things you avoided by being busy. Feel the emotions you numbed by being productive. You will have to forgive yourself for the years you lost, the patterns you clung to, the moments you betrayed your own knowing. But on the other side of that loneliness is intimacy. Not with others. With yourself. And that intimacy is what makes everything else real again. When you choose you, your relationships shift. Your work shifts. Your environment shifts. Not because you force it. Because your energy no longer attracts what dishonors you. You start to move different. You speak slower. You rest without guilt. You ask for what you need without apology. You no longer need to be everything for everyone. You just need to be everything for the version of you that has been waiting patiently in the background, whispering, "Do not forget me." That version is the foundation. Not the polished one. Not the public one. The one who cries in silence, who dreams in secret, who believes in more even when surrounded by less. That version is you. And it is time to let them lead. So let the rebuild begin. Not tomorrow. Now. In this breath. In this sentence. In this sacred yes to yourself. Let your focus be on you, not because others do not matter, but because you do. Let it be a holy devotion. A daily return. A fierce, gentle reminder I am not selfish for choosing myself. I am wise. I am ready. I am home. Chapter 2. What you allow is what will stay. There is a hidden roof that shapes every life, and it is this: you do not get what you want, you get what you allow. You may dream of peace, but if you allow chaos, chaos will stay. You may crave love, but if you allow disrespect, then disrespect becomes your atmosphere. You may long for purpose, but if you allow distraction, then you become a stranger to your own calling. Life does not respond to your hopes. It responds to your standards. And until you raise them, you will always be negotiating your worth with people, places, and patterns that never deserved your time. It begins subtly. A comment you let slide. A boundary you soften to keep someone comfortable. By habit you know drains you, but you say, "It is not that bad," and maybe it is not at first. But the small things you tolerate become the loudest parts of your life. They grow. They expand. They define you without permission. Because what you allow is not passive. It is powerful. It is permission. And whatever you continue to permit, you eventually begin to believe you deserve. This is why rebuilding yourself begins with clarity about what you will no longer accept. Not in anger. In honor. Not to punish others, but to protect yourself. You must begin to look at every area of your life and ask, does this reflect who I am becoming? If the answer is maybe, look deeper. Because mediocrity loves to disguise itself as not terrible. But you were not born to settle for not terrible. You were born to rise. And do not be fooled, the people around you already know what you allow. They may not say it, but they feel it. Every time you compromise your peace to avoid conflict, they learn that your silence can be bought. Every time you overextend yourself to keep things smooth, they learn that your well-being is negotiable. And over time, they stop asking what you need because you stopped asking it too. This is not their fault. It is your responsibility. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks, and you hold the key. They are not a rejection of others, they are a recognition of you. You set them not to push people away, but to invite the right ones closer. The ones who do not just tolerate your standards, but honor them. The ones who do not just enjoy your presence, but respect your person. And if someone cannot meet you there, let them fall away. Let them exit. Because if you keep lowering your standards to keep people around, you will soon forget how high you were born to stand. This is not just about people. It is about everything. Your thoughts. Your routines. Your environment. Your inner dialogue. You must ask, what am I allowing in my space, my mind, my time? If it drains you, it does not deserve you. If it dims you, it does not belong with you. If it confuses your path, it is not part of your future. You do not need to explain this to anyone. You just need to embody it. Because the energy of someone who has raised their standards is unmistakable. They do not argue. They align. They do not beg. They bless and release. Let me be clear, this will cost you. You will lose comfort, familiarity, maybe even community. But what you gain is greater clarity, confidence, and the rare, sacred power of knowing that your life reflects your truth. That when you wake up, you are not pretending. That when you speak, your words match your worth. That when you move, you are not avoiding, you are advancing. And yes, it will feel lonely at first. Because you are shedding not just people, but patterns. Not just habits, but history. You aren't angling yourself from everything that taught you to shrink. Everything that convinced you to play small, to please more than protect, to tolerate more than transform. And that kind of shedding is sacred. It is not a breakdown. It is a breaking open. Rebuilding yourself means you stop making excuses for things that do not fit anymore. It means you stop romanticizing struggle as a sign of strength. You are allowed to grow without pain. You are allowed to rise without apology. You are allowed to demand more, not because you are difficult, but because you finally understand that your time, your energy, your focus, they are divine. So ask yourself again, what am I allowing? Who am I becoming by allowing it? And most importantly, am I willing to change that, starting today? Because no matter how long you have tolerated something, you are one decision away from never tolerating it again. This is your rebuild. Your realignment. Your return. Let your new standards be your signature. Let your focus be the proof. Let your energy speak louder than your explanations. And let everything that no longer fits be blessed, thanked, and left behind. Because from this moment forward, what you allow is who you become. Chapter 3. Protecting your energy is an act of self minus respect. Your energy is your essence. It is your currency, your compass, your contribution. And yet, it is the very thing people are taught to give away the fastest. We trade it for approval. We spend it on over minus explaining. We pour it into people who drain us, into patterns that betray us, into days that exhaust us, and then we wonder why we feel empty. But here is a truth that can save you. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is sacred. It is the line you draw between who you are and who the world keeps asking you to be. The first step to rebuilding yourself is learning how to manage what you allow into your space, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Every interaction carries weight. Every conversation leaves residue. Every environment shifts your state. And most people do not notice the damage until it becomes their new normal. Until waking up tired becomes expected. Until anxiety becomes baseline. Until silence becomes easier than truth. But by then the damage is deep, not because something exploded, but because something leaked slowly over time. You must become ruthless with your energy. Not out of coldness, but out of clarity. You must know what lifts you and what lowers you. Who expands you and who depletes you. Where your light grows and where it flickers. And once you know, you must choose accordingly, without guilt, without justification, without apology. Because every time you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own clarity, you are teaching your nervous system that your peace is optional. And it is not. Your peace is your power. It is not a luxury. It is not a reward for working hard enough. It is the foundation of your choices, your boundaries, your ability to rebuild. And it will be tested. There will always be demands. Always someone who needs just a minute of your time. Always something urgent, pressing loud. But urgent does not mean important. And loud does not mean aligned. You must learn to listen to your inner stillness more than the outer noise. I remember the first time I said no without explaining. My voice shook. My heart raced. But something in me stood still. And in that moment, I understood something that changed everything. I do not owe everyone access. I do not owe everyone an explanation. I do not owe everyone my energy, especially when it costs me myself. That one no became the first brick in a wall of protection. Not a wall that shuts people out, a wall that keeps me in. Energy leaks are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are small habits that sabotage you. Checking your phone before checking your thoughts. Responding to texts the moment they arrive. Saying sure when your body says stop. These moments feel harmless, but they add up. They chip away at your focus. They dilute your clarity. They scatter your attention until your day is full and yet nothing is finished. And that scattered feeling? That is the cost of poor energy stewardship. Protecting your energy means becoming intentional. It means designing your day around your peace, not your panic. It means saying yes only when it serves your path. It means stepping back when your spirit says rest. It means curating your life like a garden. Not everything belongs. Not every voice deserves volume. Not every presence deserves proximity. You must become a guardian of your own soul. Because no one else will. People will take what you give. Systems will exploit what you tolerate. Patterns will repeat, until interrupted. But when you rise and say, I protect my energy like my life depends on it, you stop participating in your own depletion. You stop performing for connection. You stop apologizing for needing what you need. And what you need is simple space to breathe, people who see you, work that feeds you, silence that heals you, and rhythms that return you to yourself. These are not luxuries. They are necessities. You do not rebuild a life by hustling harder. You rebuild by returning home to presence, to purpose, to peace. Let others call it selfish. Let them call it distant. Let them say you have changed. You have. You had to. Because the person you were, the one who overextended, overgave, overcompensed, she was surviving. But the one you are becoming, she is building. And building takes focus. It takes energy. It takes discipline. It takes boundaries that are not based on convenience but conviction. So from this day forward, protect your energy like the sacred force it is. Guard it with grace. Spend it with wisdom. Preserve it with joy. Because your energy is not just how you feel, it is how you live. And you deserve to live aligned, full, and free. Chapter 4. You are the source, not the side effect. There is a deep lie that many carry without ever questioning the belief that their worth is reactive. That who they are is defined by how others respond. That if they are loved, then they must be lovable. If they are praised, they must be worthy. If they are needed, they must be valuable. But this is not truth, this is bondage. Because the moment you let your value be determined by outside reactions, you become a side effect. A mirror for someone else's gaze. A reflection, not a source. You were never meant to be a reaction. You are a cause. A beginning. A source of your own value, your own validation, your own direction. When you forget this, you start living like someone who needs to be chosen before they can move. You hesitate. You wait for signs, signals, permission. You hold your breath for the approval that never comes in the way you need. And meanwhile, the life you were born to live sits on pause, not because you lack potential, but because you have handed your power to external hands. But what happens when you reclaim it? When you stop trying to be impressive and start being aligned. When you stop performing and start becoming. When you realize that every time you betray your own needs to keep someone else comfortable, you teach yourself that your truth is negotiable. What happens is the rebuild begins not on the outside, but within. Because the most powerful thing you can ever do is remember, I am the source. I am the well. I am the beginning. When you live as a side effect, you depend on feedback. You wait to be noticed. You hope to be seen. But when you live as the source, you move from center. You show up without needing applause. You speak without shrinking your tone. You act from clarity, not reaction. And slowly, the world begins to respond not because you demanded it, but because energy aligns with energy. Confidence attracts clarity. Ownership creates opportunity. Not the desperate kind. The natural kind. Being the source does not mean you never need others. It means you no longer need to be completed by them. It means you stop outsourcing your identity to their preferences. It means you do not contort yourself to fit into places that shrink you. You walk in whole, or you do not walk in at all. You give from overflow, not obligation. You love with freedom, not fear. You stop asking, will they like me? And start asking, is this aligned with who I am becoming? This shift is radical. It will shake your relationships. Because people who loved your side minus effect self may not recognize your source self. They may say you have changed, that you are cold, that you are too much. But they are wrong. You are not too much, they were simply too accustomed to your silence. And your silence was never peace. It was suppression. Let the discomfort come. Let the awkwardness rise. Because every time you reclaim your voice, your rhythm, your truth, you are telling your nervous system we are safe now. We are allowed to lead, and that safety is not in the absence of conflict. It is in the presence of choice. The choice to be rooted in your own presence. The choice to speak even when your voice shakes. The choice to move even when no one claps. That is what it means to rebuild, to remember that your life flows from you, not to you. Stop waiting to be invited. You are the invitation. Stop waiting for the room to validate you. You bring the validation. Stop asking for signs to start. You are the sign. And every time you choose yourself in a world that taught you to perform, to please, to produce, you are breaking generational patterns of passivity. You are creating a new normal where being rooted in your own soul is enough. This is not ego. This is essence. This is what happens when you move from source. You do not need a bigger platform. You need a deeper anchor. You do not need more praise. You need more peace. You do not need to be seen more. You need to see yourself clearly, daily, fully. And once you do, the world will adjust. Not immediately. Not perfectly. But inevitably. Because aligned energy always attracts aligned experience. So rise today, not with arrogance, but with awareness. That you are not the effect of anyone else's decisions. You are the source of your own. You are not here to orbit around someone else's glow. You are here to burn with your own light. And the moment you stop seeking permission to shine, the world around you shifts, not because it changed, but because you did. Chapter 5. Hill before you hustle. The world will tell you to keep moving. Keep working. Keep pushing. That the answer to your ache is more effort. That success will silence your pain. That achievement will fix what is broken. So you hustle. You build. You climb. And for a while, it works. The noise quiets. The applause drowns out the emptiness. The progress numbs the pressure. But when the day ends and the lights dim, the ache remains. Because what you buried beneath productivity never left, it just waited. We are not taught to heal. We are taught to perform. To get back up quickly. To move on without processing. To pretend we are fine so we can stay functional. But functioning is not the same as living. And when you rush to rebuild without healing, you do not build a life, you build a mask. A beautiful, curated version of you that fools the world but fails to free your soul. Healing is not a luxury. It is not something you earn after you succeed. It is the foundation that makes true success sustainable. Because when you do not heal, you create from your wounds. You work to prove instead of express. You grind to escape instead of grow. And the very things you build become the new cages that keep you from yourself. You do not need more goals. You need more truth. You do not need more pressure. You need more presence. You do not need to move faster. You need to move cleaner with fewer entanglements, fewer inner contradictions, fewer unresolved parts pretending they are fine. The work you do on the outside must match the work you are doing on the inside. Otherwise, success becomes suffocating. Healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes, it is as simple as sitting in silence and asking, "What am I still carrying that no longer belongs to me?" It is pausing to grieve what you were never allowed to mourn. It is naming the patterns you learned from survival but no longer need. It is telling the truth about where it hurts, not because you want sympathy, but because you want sovereignty. When you begin to heal, your entire relationship with productivity changes. You stop rushing. You stop proving. You stop tying your worth to your output. You begin to create from overflow, not emptiness. You begin to show up with presence instead of pressure. And suddenly everything feels different, not because the work got easier, but because your relationship to yourself became healthier. I remember the season when I finally stopped running. Not physically, but emotionally. I stopped pretending that being busy was the same as being whole. I stopped using my goals to outrun my grief. I started to listen not to the noise outside, but to the ache within. And in that stillness I realized something that changed me forever. I had been trying to succeed my way out of sadness. But no amount of success could fill the space that only healing could reach. So I began to do the hard work. The slow work. The quiet work. I forgave people who would never apologize. I sat with memories that made me want to flinch. I rewrote the stories I told myself about failure, about love, about enoughness. And as I healed, my focus returned. My joy became genuine. My ambition became sacred, not fueled by fear, but by freedom. If you are rebuilding yourself, start here with healing. With the deep, slow, messy process of reclaiming all the parts of you that you left behind in the name of being productive. Because you are not a machine. You are a miracle. And you cannot rush a miracle. You must tend to it. Water it. Listen to it. Trust its timing. Let the world chase speed. You chase wholeness. Let others define their value by how much they do. You define yours by how well you know yourself. Let the noise tell you that healing is a distraction. You remember that healing is the source of your power, your clarity, your resilience. Do not hustle to hide your pain. Heal so that when you do hustle, it is from a place of purpose, not performance. Heal so that when you succeed, it does not feel like a mask, it feels like a mirror. A reflection of the inner work that no one clapped for, but that changed everything. This is your invitation to pause. To breathe. To lay down the weight you have been carrying in the name of movement. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to begin again, not with more pressure, but with more presence. Because rebuilding does not begin with strategy. It begins with wholeness. And wholeness begins with healing. Chapter 6. Stop explaining, start embodying. There comes a point in your journey where you realize words are no longer enough. Where explaining who you are, what you want, why you changed, feels more like a burden than a bridge. You speak with sincerity, but they do not hear. You defend your growth, but they still resist. You try to make others comfortable with your evolution, but in doing so, you become uncomfortable with yourself. That is the moment you must decide, will you keep explaining, or will you start embodying? The truth is, the version of you that needs to be understood is often the version still seeking permission. Still unsure. still hoping that someone will say, yes, you're allowed. But the version of you that is ready to rebuild does not beg to be seen, she sees herself. She does not wait to be validated, she validates her own becoming. She does not shrink to make sense to others, she expands and lets her embodiment do the talking. Explanations are for people who are open. Rebuilding is for people who are ready. And most of the people who question your focus, your boundaries, your changes, they are not really confused. They are confronted. Your clarity shakes their comfort. Your transformation triggers their stagnation. And so, they push back. Not because they are curious, but because they are clinging. They miss the version of you who made life easier for them. But your job is not to be easy. It is to be true. Every time you pause to explain your growth to someone who has no intention of honoring it, you leak power. Every time you justify your healing to someone who benefits from your brokennesses, you delay your rebuild. And the longer you stay in that space, the more you forget who you are doing this for. Not them. You. You are not obligated to clarify your clarity. You are not responsible for translating your transformation into a language others understand. You are allowed to move silently, boldly, quietly. You are allowed to shift without announcement, to evolve without apology, to become without debate. Embodying means your actions speak your truth. Your presence reflects your power. Your silence carries more conviction than your explanations ever could. It means you stop trying to convince and you start choosing. You choose your energy, your standards, your boundaries. You choose your rituals, your rhythms, your rest. And in doing so, you begin to radiate something unexplainable: certainty. And certainty, when rooted in truth, becomes magnetic. It attracts alignment. It repels confusion. Not because you are forcing anything, but because your being speaks what your words used to carry. You become the message, the model, the mirror. And slowly those around you either rise to meet you or fade to make space. This is not about arrogance. It is about ownership. When you are rebuilding yourself, you do not have the luxury of spreading your energy thin. You are doing deep sacred work. You are unlearning survival patterns. You are uprooting decades of shame. You are rewriting narratives inherited from generations before you. That kind of work requires protection. It requires precision. It requires you to be less available to everyone else's confusion, so you can be more available to your own clarity. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them question your silence. You do not owe them the story. You owe yourself the embodiment. You owe yourself a life that reflects the work you have done, the truths you have reclaimed, the power you have reawakened. Because when you start embodying your values, your desires, your standards, you no longer need to ask for space. You become the space. You no longer ask for permission. You walk with purpose. You no longer explain what changed. You live it. And that life, the one that honors your becoming, that mirrors your healing, that reflects your truth, becomes your legacy. Not built in noise. Built in clarity. In alignment. In quiet, consistent, unapologetic choice. So stop explaining. Start embodying. Let your life be your loudest statement. Let your presence do the teaching. Let your actions speak for you when your words are done being spent. Because the strongest thing you will ever do is not convince someone to believe you. It is to believe yourself so deeply that you no longer need to. Chapter 7. Your standards shape your future. You do not rise to your goals, you fall to your standards. It is a hard truth, one that many resist because it demands self-minus responsibility. Not dreams, not declarations, but daily, non-minus negotiable expectations for how you live, love, work, and walk through the world. And if your life feels stuck, scattered, misaligned, it is not because your vision is wrong. It is because your standards have not caught up with it. Standards are the invisible architecture of your future. They determine who stays, who leaves, what you pursue, what you tolerate, and how much of yourself you bring to the table. They are not about perfection. They are about consistency, integrity, alignment. You can have the clearest vision in the world, but if your standards are loose, your foundation will crack under pressure. Because life does not bend to what you say you want, it responds to what you settle for. Most people confuse preferences with standards. Preferences are hopes. Standards are decisions. A preference says, I would like to be treated with respect. A standard says, if you speak to me like that again, we are done. A preference says, I want to take care of my health. A standard says, this is my workout, this is my food, and this is non-minus negotiable. A preference whispers. A standard commands. And if you want your life to change, you have to start commanding. This is not about control. It is about clarity. Because when you are clear on your standards, everything else becomes easier. Decisions simplify. Distractions fall away. Boundaries enforce themselves. You stop chasing. You start choosing. You stop explaining. You start embodying. People know where you stand because you stand there every day without wobble. And that kind of consistency is rare. It is magnetic. It is what creates momentum. But raising your standards requires courage. Because the moment you raise them, you will feel the cost. People will test you. Life will test you. Old habits will beg for one more chance. And you will be tempted to soften your edge just a little. To make an exception just this once. But remember, every exception becomes an example. Every time you tolerate less than your standard, you teach yourself that your word does not matter. That your truth is optional. And that kind of internal betrayal is the most dangerous because it is silent. Rebuilding yourself means setting new standards, not from resentment, but from reverence. Reverence for your time. Reverence for your body. Reverence for your energy. Reverence for your future. You begin to say, this is how I live now. This is what I expect. This is what I bring. And I will not apologize for it, not because you are better than anyone, but because you are finally becoming better for yourself. Your standards create your schedule, your relationships, your rhythms. They influence how you speak to yourself, how you respond to stress, how you pursue what matters. And every time you raise them, you invite a higher version of life to meet you. Not because you force it, because you align with it. Your new standard becomes the new signal you send to the universe. I am ready for more and I am willing to act like it. Let me be clear, you do not raise your standards by saying more. You raise them by choosing differently. You say no without flinching. You walk away without begging. You rest without guilt. You move without fanfare. You honor your rituals. You enforce your limits. And when people ask, "Who do you think you are?" you do not defend. You demonstrate. Because the most powerful thing about standards is this: they do not need to be explained. They are felt. They are seen. They are known. And when you live by them, you become undeniable. Not because of your talent. Because of your alignment. People may not like your standards, but they will respect them. And the ones who cannot meet them? Let them go. Their exit creates space for what you are really ready for. This is your life. You do not get to live it twice. You do not get to delay forever. You must decide: will I keep tolerating what I said I would never allow? Or will I rise not to some distant dream, but to the standard that future demands of me now? Choose to rise. Quietly. Daily. Powerfully. Because your standard is not a limit. It is a statement. It is you saying, "I am not waiting for the world to change. I am changing the world I allow into me." And that one choice made consistently will rebuild everything. Chapter 8. Self-trust is the foundation of all growth. There is no rebuild without trust in not the trust of others, but the trust within yourself. The kind that says, "I believe I will show up. I believe I will keep my word. I believe I will not abandon myself again." That kind of self-trust is sacred. It cannot be faked. It cannot be borrowed. It is earned choice by choice, day by day, through the quiet, private integrity of honoring your own truth, even when no one else is looking. The reason so many people feel stuck is not because they do not have goals. It is because they do not trust themselves to follow through. They have broken too many promises to themselves. They have said "starting Monday" too many times. They have made decisions from clarity and then abandoned them, the moment comfort whispered, "You can do it later." And every time they did, their confidence eroded. Not from failure, from inconsistency. From the betrayal of knowing better but doing less. But here is the good news: self-trust is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And it can be rebuilt not with grand gestures but with small, steady steps. With choosing the walk over the excuse. With honoring your boundaries when no one else enforces them. With showing up even when no one claps. Because every time you do, your nervous system gets the message: we are safe with ourselves again. It starts with your word. If you say you will wake up early, wake up. Not to be perfect, but to be dependable. If you say you will rest today, rest. Not because you are lazy, but because you are finally listening. The goal is not discipline for discipline's sake. It is trust. It is learning that your future is safe in your own hands. That you are not a stranger to your own decisions. That you can lead yourself through uncertainty, through fatigue, through temptation, and still arrive with integrity. Self-trust also means you stop outsourcing your intuition. You stop needing 10 opinions before you move. You stop waiting for a sign that is already embedded in your knowing. You stop asking people who have never lived your vision whether or not it makes sense. Some things will not make sense to others because they were not given your assignment. Your inner voice is not loud because it does not need to be. It is your job to turn down the world and turn up your truth. But that truth will be tested. You will have moments where you doubt, where you forget, where you feel like quitting would be easier. And that is where self-trust matters most. Not in the clarity, but in the fog. Not when everything is working, but when nothing is. Trust says, even when I do not see the path, I know I am still the one who chooses how I walk, and that walk steady, present, aligned builds a foundation that no external force can shake. Do not confuse confidence with charisma. Confidence is quiet. It is a body that relaxes because it knows you will take care of it. It is a heart that stays open because it knows you will protect its boundaries. It is a mind that does not spiral because it knows you will respond, not react. That kind of confidence does not come from applause. It comes from keeping your promises, from walking your talk, from becoming the kind of person your future self would be proud to follow. I remember when I finally made the decision to trust myself again. Not trust that everything would go perfectly, but trust that even if it did not, I would handle it. That I would not crumble. That I would not abandon myself when it got hard. And from that moment, I stopped needing everyone else to believe in me. Because I believed in me. And that belief, that inner contract, changed the way I moved, the way I spoke, the way I chose. If you want to rebuild your life, start by becoming someone you trust. You do not need to have all the answers. You do not need to know every step. You just need to know that the person making the decisions you is honest, aligned, and willing. You need to become someone whose yes means something, whose no has weight, whose silence is not avoidance, but awareness. That is real strength. That is the foundation of growth. You do not need to trust the process if you trust the person walking through it. And that person is you. So make the decision. Not to be perfect, but to be loyal to your truth, your timing, your integrity. Every time you honor that, you are saying, I am not just rebuilding a life. I am rebuilding a home and die on the foundation. Chapter 9. Your focus is a sacred resource. Focus is not just about productivity, it is about power. It is about presence. It is about choosing, moment by moment, what gets your attention and what does not. And in a world where everything is designed to pull you in 100 directions, your ability to focus has become more than a skill, it is a spiritual practice. It is how you protect your peace, how you preserve your potential, how you rebuild yourself without getting distracted by noise that does not deserve your energy. Most people are not failing because they are incapable. They are failing because they are scattered. Their energy is leaking into every notification, every crisis, every conversation that has nothing to do with their purpose. They start the day with intention, but ended wondering where the time went, not because they did nothing, but because they gave everything to things that did not matter. Focus is how you draw the line. It is how you say, this is where my life is headed. And everything else, the gossip, the distractions, the expectations, the interruptions, must wait. That kind of clarity is rare. It will be misunderstood. But it is necessary. Because you cannot build something meaningful with fragmented attention. You cannot grow when your energy is split between proving yourself and honoring yourself. You cannot rise if every time you begin you allow someone else's chaos to pull you back down. Rebuilding yourself requires fierce focus. It requires you to become unavailable to anything that weakens your alignment. Not out of rudeness, but out of reverence. You must begin to treat your focus as sacred because it is. It is how you steer your days. It is how you decide your future. It is how you say, this is what I am becoming, and I will no longer be distracted by what I am not. This does not mean you become cold or cut off. It means you become clear. You know who gets access to your time. You know what habits serve your peace. You know which projects align with your future. And if something or someone does not match that vision, you let it go, not because it is bad, but because it is not your path. I have seen people spend years stuck. They chased every opportunity, answered every message, entertained every doubt. And at the end of it all, they were exhausted, not from doing too little, but from doing too much of the wrong things. But when they finally chose one lane, one priority, one standard, their lives changed. Because energy that was once scattered became concentrated. And concentrated energy is unstoppable. You must understand what you focus on, you feed. If you focus on fear, it grows. If you focus on lack, it expands. But if you focus on truth, on alignment, on the vision that calls your name, even when no one else believes, that focus becomes fuel. It becomes momentum. It becomes clarity so sharp that it slices through every excuse, every distraction, every lie that once kept you small. This is not about being busy. This is about being intentional. Focus is not doing more. It is doing what matters again and again and again. Even when it is boring. Even when no one claps. Even when you feel like nothing is happening. Because that is the test. Can you focus when the results are not instant? Can you stay committed when the outcome is not guaranteed? Can you keep choosing what builds you, even when no one is watching? You must. Because your rebuild depends on it. Protect your focus like your life depends on it, because it does. Your future self is not built in inspiration. She is built in repetition. In the sacred, often unseen practice of choosing your focus over your feelings. Of showing up when it would be easier to scroll. Of committing when it would be easier to quit. This is not about intensity. It is about consistency. One focused hour a day will change your life more than 10 distracted ones. One aligned choice will take you further than 100 rushed reactions. Do not waste your power trying to be everything. Be one thing fully. And watch everything change. You do not need to do more. You need to focus more. Let your life reflect your vision, not your distractions. Let your calendar reflect your healing, not your people minus pleasing. Let your energy reflect your truth, not your fears. Because what you focus on becomes who you are. And who you are becoming is far too important to keep feeding what no longer deserves your attention. Chapter 10. You do not have to be who you were. There is a moment in every journey where you realize the person you used to be is no longer the person you need to be. You look back at the patterns, the behaviors, the choices, and you see them for what they were: survival. Not weakness. Not failure. Just survival. You did what you had to do to make it through. You said yes when you meant no. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You carried others when you could barely stand. You stayed silent when everything inside you begged to speak. But now, the season has changed. And so must you. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow the things you once celebrated. The beliefs you once defended. The identity you once wore like armor. Growth is not betrayal, it is birth. And sometimes the only way to truly rebuild yourself is to lay down who you have been, so you can rise into who you were always meant to become. But this shift is not easy. Because the world remembers your old self. It pulls you back with reminders, expectations, habits. You used to be so easygoing. You never used to need boundaries. You were always the one who showed up. They say it with nostalgia, but what they really mean is we like you better when you were more convenient for us. And in that moment, you must choose. Will you shrink back into the version of you that made everyone else comfortable? Or will you keep moving forward, even when it means disappointing the expectations that were never aligned with your soul? Let me tell you this, you do not owe anyone consistency with your past if it costs you alignment with your future. You are allowed to stop being the one who fixes everything, the one who absorbs every one's chaos, the one who keeps peace by sacrificing your own. You are allowed to let go of identities that were formed out of trauma, not truth. You are allowed to walk away from dynamics that demand your silence to keep functioning. This is not disloyalty. It is liberation. Rebuilding yourself requires releasing yourself from roles, from stories, from scripts you never agreed to but felt obligated to perform. It requires stepping into the unfamiliar, even when it feels like loss. Because what you are losing is not yourself, it is your conditioning. The version of you shaped by survival, by scarcity, by fear. And that version deserves gratitude but not permanence. Do not let guilt keep you in patterns you have outgrown. Guilt is not always a sign of wrongdoing. Sometimes, it is just a sign that you are doing something new. Something your nervous system is not used to. Something your inner child was never taught was safe. But it is safe now. You are safe now. And you no longer have to carry the weight of a version of you that existed only to make others comfortable. I know you want to be loyal. I know you do not want to let people down. But if staying loyal to your past requires betraying your future, then it is time to let go. You are not abandoning anyone. You are simply choosing to no longer abandon yourself. That is the difference between performing and becoming. One seeks applause. The other seeks truth. And truth, though often uncomfortable, always leads to freedom. You are not your habits. You are not your history. You are not your reputation. You are not your trauma. You are not even your best day or your worst day. You are the chooser. The one who gets to say, "This is no longer who I am." The one who gets to wake up tomorrow and try again with more clarity, more compassion, more courage. Give yourself permission to evolve. Not gradually. Fully. Boldly. Let the old version of you be honored, but not idolized. Let her rest. Let her breathe. Let her become a memory, not a mandate. Because every time you cling to who you were, you rob yourself of who you could be. So today, say it out loud if you need to. I do not have to be who I was. Say it with tears. With fear. With trembling. Say it even if no one else understands. Say it until your body believes you. Say it until the guilt turns into grace. Say it until the freedom feels like home. Because your rebuild begins with one powerful realization: who you were got you here. But who you are becoming is what will carry you forward. Chapter 11. You teach the world how to treat you. Every interaction is a lesson. Every boundary you set, every silence you allow, every word you accept or reject, it becomes a blueprint. Not just for others, but for yourself. Because whether you realize it or not, you are teaching the world how to treat you. With every choice. With every compromise. With every moment you speak up or stay quiet, you are writing the manual for how others will show up in your life. And the question is not, do they respect me? Respect is not something you demand. It is something you demonstrate. You demonstrate it by the way you speak to yourself in their presence, by the way you hold your boundaries when they push, by the way you stay rooted in your truth even when it would be easier to go along. People do not learn from your intentions. They learn from your standards. And if your standards are inconsistent, so will be the way they treat you. It is easy to blame others for how they show up. But every pattern that continues has a permission slip attached to it. Maybe it is quiet. Maybe it is unspoken. But it is there. And the moment you realize this, the moment you reclaim your authority, everything begins to change. Not because they changed. Because you did. You teach the world how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you keep explaining the same boundary, it is not a boundary, it is a suggestion. If you keep forgiving the same betrayal, it is not grace, it is self minus abandonment. If you keep accepting half minus love, half minus effort, half minus truth, then do not be surprised when that is all you are offered. The world reflects your own beliefs about what you are worth. And when you raise your belief, your reality follows. Rebuilding yourself means raising your standard not just for others, but for yourself. It means no longer letting fear of rejection keep you in rooms that require your silence. It means no longer justifying bad behavior in the name of history. It means no longer calling pain loyalty, just because you are afraid to be alone. Because being alone with your peace is better than being surrounded in chaos. People will resist your shift. They will say you have changed. They will question your tone, your rules, your rhythm. Let them. Because the ones who truly love you will learn how to meet you there. And the ones who only love the version of you that served them, they will fall away. Let them. Do not chase what asks you to compromise. Do not beg for what should recognize your worth without explanation. I have seen lives transform not through external changes, but through internal shifts. A woman who stopped over minus explaining. A man who started showing up on time for his own goals. A soul that finally said, no more, not in anger, in truth. And in that moment, the world around them began to shift. Not because they yelled louder, but because they stopped whispering their worth. This is what it means to rebuild. You stop hoping for better behavior, and you start embodying better belief. You stop trying to fix people, and you start becoming someone who cannot be mishandled. You walk with energy that says, I love deeply but not blindly. I give fully, but not foolishly. I am here, but only if you are willing to meet me in truth. And if they cannot, that is not your burden. That is their limit. Let it be. Let them be. You do not have to fight for a seat at a table where you constantly have to explain your value. Build your own table. Fill it with people who speak your language of growth, of grace, of boundaries, of mutual respect. Let your presence be a mirror not for who they want you to be, but for who you truly are. Let your energy speak before your words do. Let your standard be the loudest part of your life. Because in the end, the world will rise or fall to the level you allow. So today, draw a new line. Not in reaction. In reverence. Say, this is who I am now. This is what I require now. This is how I move now, not to prove anything, but to protect everything you have rebuilt within. Because the person you are becoming deserves to be treated with honor by others, yes. But first by you. Chapter 12. Let the old life collapse. There is a sacred moment in every rebuild when you can no longer carry both worlds. The life you had and the life you want. The identity that kept you safe and the one that sets you free. The story that made you small and the one that calls you higher. And when you reach that moment, there is only one choice that will honor your truth. Let the old life collapse. Not in bitterness. In reverence. Not because you failed. Because you finally told the truth. It will feel like loss. It will feel like death. But it is not. It is release. The weight you have carried, the masks you wore, the roles you played, they weren't ever meant to be forever. They were seasons. Teachers. Bridges. And now, the bridge has done its work. The old life was never wrong. It was simply finished. And your refusal to release it is what creates the ache. People will ask what happened to you. They will try to resurrect the version of you that made sense to them. The agreeable one. The reliable one. The one who kept peace by betraying herself. They will not understand why you no longer laugh at what once numbed you. Why you no longer answer every call. Why your voice is changed stronger, clearer, no longer afraid to take up space. And you will be tempted to explain. Do not. You do not owe a eulogy for the life you buried. You do not need a permission slip to rise. Let the old life collapse. Let the identity that kept you in cycles finally burn. Let the silence you used to keep, the pain you used to swallow, the exhaustion you used to normalize, let it all fall. Because when it falls, what remains is truth. What remains is breath. What remains is you, not the performed you, but the real you. This collapse is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is what happens when you finally love yourself enough to stop pretending. When you stop watering dead things. When you stop being loyal to patterns that drained you. It is not a breakdown. It is a becoming. The collapse clears the way. It creates space. And in that space, something new is allowed to live. Not louder but deeper. Not shinier but stronger. Not praised by everyone, but aligned with your soul. And that alignment, it is priceless. It is peace that no one can shake. It is clarity that no storm can steal. It is the kind of freedom that only comes when you are no longer afraid to lose what was never truly yours. Rebuilding means you stop grasping. You stop clinging. You stop rehearsing who you used to be. You stand in the rubble and say, let it fall. Let it end. Let it burn, because what I am building now will not be built on pretending. And when you do, you start to see beauty in the ashes. You start to feel pride in your own permission. You start to walk taller, speak braver, rest deeper, because you are no longer splitting yourself between truth and tolerance. You do not have to salvage what is unsustainable. You do not have to keep playing a role just because the audience is still clapping. You do not have to keep holding the weight of an expired identity. Your soul knows. Your body knows. Your peace knows. And the longer you delay, the louder the inner protest becomes. Let the old life collapse. Let the friendships that only existed in your silence fade. Let the commitments you made when you were scared dissolve. Let the responsibilities you carried to be needed fall off your back. Let the false humility, the self-minimizing, the quiet compliance, let them all return to dust. Because what is rising in you is not small. It is not convenient. It is not here to be polite. It is here to be true. To be free. To be full. And when you stop being afraid of collapse, you start becoming someone unshakable. Someone who does not just rebuild, but rebuilds in a way that no longer requires performance to be loved, burnout to be valued, or silence to be accepted. So grieve it if you must. Honor it if you need. But do not try to save it. Let it go. Let it fall. Because what you are rebuilding now is not just a better life, it is a true one. A life that fits you like skin. That reflects you like a mirror. That holds you like a home. Let the old life collapse. The mindset reset. This is the moment you stop reading and start reflecting. The moment the mirror turns toward you not to judge, but to reveal. Because no matter how many truths you have read, none of it matters if it does not become a standard. Not a mood. A mindset. Not a phase. A foundation. This is where the shift happens, not in your feelings, but in your framing. How you see yourself. How you speak to yourself. How you decide what you are available for from this moment on. You must get clear. What will you no longer tolerate from yourself? From your habits? From your environment? What boundaries will you set not to push people out but to protect the person you are becoming? What patterns will you finally break, not because they are wrong, but because they are no longer required for who you are now? This is your mindset reset. Your contract with clarity. Your refusal to keep negotiating with confusion. Your decision to stop seeking approval for choosing peace. Your liberation from proving, pleasing, and pretending. You have done enough of that. It got you here. But it will not take you forward. You must now ask, what do I believe about my own worth? Do I believe I am worth protecting? Worth prioritizing? Worth honoring? Not just occasionally, daily. Because your rebuild is not powered by strategy. It is powered by standard. And that standard must be rooted in the radical belief that your wholeness is non-negotiable. Challenge your thoughts. When they say you are behind, ask, says who? When they whisper, you are too much, say, then I am not for you. When they shout, you will fail, respond, and I will rise again. This is how you reset, not with perfection, but with perspective. With presence. With the practice of choosing alignment over anxiety. Truth over habit. Growth over guilt. You must now hold yourself to a higher rhythm. Not because the world demands it, but because your future deserves it. You must take ownership of your energy, your time, your yes, your no. You must start living like someone who understands that healing is not the end goal, it is the beginning of leadership. And the first person you must lead is you. Write your new standards with your life. With the way you answer the phone. With the way you rest. With the way you pause before committing. With the way you end conversations that do not nourish. With the way you step away from noise without needing to announce your departure. Let your new mindset be silent but strong. Private but powerful. Invisible but immovable. This is not about becoming harder. It is about becoming clearer. Clearer about what you value. Clearer about what you need. Clearer about what you are no longer willing to explain. Because clarity makes courage easier. And courage makes change sustainable. From this point forward, the rebuild is not about addition. It is about alignment. It is about subtraction of distraction, of distortion, of the old mindset that told you to be small, soft, invisible. No more. You will not shrink to fit a version of life that your soul has outgrown. So take this moment and reset. Reset the way you speak. Reset the way you wake. Reset the way you spend the first 10 minutes of your morning and the last 10 of your night. Reset the agreements you made when you were in survival, and renegotiate them from your new standard of peace. Reset the way you see delays not as denial, but as divine realignment. This is your sacred pause. Your conscious decision to never go back to sleep. To never again make yourself digestible for people who were never meant to sit at your table. To never again mistake businessens for purpose or self-minus neglect for strength. You are not rebuilding a life. You are rebuilding a mindset. One that says, I am no longer available for inconsistency in others or myself. I am no longer available for relationships that demand my silence. I am no longer available for environments that shrink my spirit. I am no longer available for a pace that destroys my presence. This is your new alignment. And from here, everything flows. The final call. This is not the end. This is the edge. The edge of the life you built in survival and the life you are now choosing in truth. And from this edge, you must leap not into chaos, but into clarity. Not into fear, but into freedom. Not into someone else's rhythm, but into your own. Because everything you have read, everything you have reflected on, everything that stirred in your chest as you turn these pages, it all leads here. To this moment. The moment where knowing becomes choosing. The moment where choosing becomes becoming. You cannot go back. You know too much now. You have seen too much. Felt too much. Shed too much. And if you try to return to the old life, the old mindset, the old agreements, your soul will protest. It will scream through your fatigue. It will ache through your silence. It will resist every attempt to make yourself small again. Because once you wake up to your worth, pretending you are asleep becomes unbearable. This is the final call. Not to change you already have. The final call is to embody. To live it. To walk it. To speak it. To show up every single day like someone who finally decided that their peace is more important than approval. That their alignment is more valuable than attention. That their future is too sacred to keep deferring. You will be tempted to forget. To delay. To downplay your growth so others are not uncomfortable. Do not. You will be tempted to explain your new standards, your new pace, your new boundaries. You do not have to. Let your actions teach. Let your silence speak. Let your presence declare what your past never could. There will be resistance. Not because you are wrong, but because you are real. Realness threatens everything built on performance. Truth threatens everything built on control. And your commitment to yourself will feel dangerous to people who only knew how to love your compliance. Let them go. Not in anger. In grace. And bless the space they leave behind it as needed. Because now, your life must reflect your healing. Not your hurt. Your days must echo your decisions, not your delays. Your voice must mirror your clarity, not your confusion. Your presence must say, I am here fully, finally, and without apology. There is a version of you waiting. Not in the distance. Within. A version that does not chase, does not beg, does not explain. She moves with certainty. She chooses with clarity. She speaks with softness and power. She is not perfect, she is real. She is not always confident, but she is committed. And that commitment changes everything. You know her already. You met her in the quiet moments of this journey. In the stillness between the noise. In the conviction rising from your chest as you turned every page and whispered to yourself, "This is who I really am. And now, it is time to live like it." Let your life become the loudest answer to every doubt you ever carried. Let your focus become your protest against distraction. Let your self-respect become your response to every time you were misunderstood. Let your truth become your triumph. You are not rebuilding to impress. You are rebuilding to be free. This is your time. Not to start over, but to start true. Not to do more, but to live aligned. Not to be liked, but to be at peace. Let the world watch. Let the old stories end. Let the final chapter of your former self close. And let this next chapter be written in your new voice. You have everything you need. Now go and become